Most of us will spend our entire lives running a race we don't even realize we're in. It's a silent, exhausting marathon with no finish line, fueled by a single unspoken question. Am I enough? We whisper it with every post, every promotion, every new friendship. We wait for the world to answer, for someone, anyone, to look back at us and say, yes, yes you are. But what if the answer we're so desperately seeking isn't out there at all? What if it was never supposed to be? This is the story of a man who spent 40 years waiting for that answer, until a quiet Tuesday morning taught him to stop asking the question. Elias lived his life like a carefully curated museum. Each part of it was polished, perfectly lit, and arranged for the approval of invisible judges. His career in architecture was a testament to this: sleek, minimalist designs that won awards and graced the covers of magazines. His apartment was a carbon copy of his work: clean lines, muted colors, and not a single object out of place. It was a life built to be admired. And it was. Friends called him disciplined. Colleagues called him a visionary. But alone, in the echo chamber of his perfect apartment, Elias just felt hollow. The applause always faded, the magazine ink dried, and the silence that followed was deafening. He'd scroll through photos of his own work online, hunting for the comments, the likes, the digital pats on the back that assured him he was on the right path. He measured his worth in nodding heads and positive reviews. A client's enthusiastic email would send his spirits soaring for a day. A single critical comment on a design forum could shatter his week. He was a ghost in his own life, completely dependent on the reflections he saw in other people's eyes. His longest relationship had ended because, as she put it, she could never seem to reach the real him. She said it was like living with a beautiful, empty mansion. He remembered staring at her, a polite, practiced smile on his face, while inside, a frantic voice screamed, "What do I need to be for you to stay? Tell me, and I'll be that." But he never said it. He just nodded, as if he understood, and helped her pack. The turning point wasn't a dramatic rock bottom. It wasn't a movie scene. It was far more ordinary and far more profound. It was a Tuesday. A spectacularly unremarkable Tuesday. Elias was presenting a new museum design to the city council, the culmination of 6 months of sleepless nights and relentless perfectionism. This wasn't just another project. This was his masterpiece, the one that would finally silence the gnawing voice of inadequacy for good. He walked into the sterile, wood-paneled room, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He delivered the presentation flawlessly. His voice was steady, his arguments compelling. He finished, holding his breath, scanning the faces of the 5 council members. He was searching for that glimmer, that look of awe, of unqualified approval. Instead, he was met with polite indifference. The head of the council, a man named Mr. Abernathy, cleared his throat. "Thank you, Mr. Vance. It's, functional. A bit cold, for a public space, perhaps. We have 2 other firms to hear from. We'll be in touch." Functional. Cold. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Elias felt the familiar icy dread creep into his stomach. He'd poured his soul into every line, every angle, every material, and their verdict was functional. He walked out of the city hall and into the blinding afternoon sun. The usual script would be to retreat to his apartment, obsess over every word, and mentally redesign the entire project until 3 a.m. He'd replay Abernathy's face in his mind, dissecting his micro-expressions, trying to pinpoint the exact moment he'd lost them. But this time, something broke. He didn't go home. He just walked. He walked past the pristine cafes he usually frequented, past the art galleries where his colleagues networked. He kept walking until he found himself in a part of the city he never visited. A small, slightly chaotic neighborhood with mismatched houses and overgrown community gardens. He ended up in front of a small, cluttered pottery studio. Through the dusty window, he could see an old woman, her hands caked in wet clay, humming to herself as she worked at a wheel. She wasn't performing. She wasn't creating for an audience. She was just making. Drawn by an impulse he didn't understand, he walked in. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and kilns. The old woman looked up, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She didn't ask if he was a buyer or a student. She just smiled. "Come to play in the mud?" Elias, the man of clean lines and perfect angles, just stood there for a moment. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He did something without a goal, without an expected outcome. He nodded. For the next hour, he sat at a pottery wheel, his tailored suit jacket draped over a stool. The woman, whose name was Lena, gave him a lump of clay and said only, "See what it wants to be." His first attempt was a disaster, a lopsided, wobbly mess. The old Elias would have been mortified, deeply ashamed of the imperfection. He would have apologized, made a self-deprecating joke to deflect the failure. But sitting there, with clay under his fingernails and a smear of it on his cheek, he just looked at the deformed pot and laughed. A real, genuine laugh that came from his belly. It felt foreign. Lena glanced over, a warm, knowing look on her face. "Ah, yes," she said softly. "The clay doesn't care who you are or what you've done. It just responds to your hands, your truth." Her words landed with a quiet, seismic force. Your truth. He spent the rest of the afternoon there. He didn't try to make a perfect vase or a symmetrical bowl. He just felt the clay. He let his hands move. He made clumsy, misshapen things, and with each one, a layer of armor he didn't even know he was wearing began to crack and fall away. He wasn't an award-winning architect in this place. He wasn't successful or visionary or disciplined. He was just a man with clay-covered hands, making something for no one but himself. And for the first time as long as he could remember, he felt a whisper of peace, a feeling that wasn't borrowed from someone else's approval. It was his. What Elias found in that dusty studio wasn't a new hobby. It was a new way of being. He discovered a profound and simple truth that our world's so hard to make us forget. Your worth is not a performance. The chase for validation is a ghost hunt. We're chasing a feeling, the feeling of being whole, of being enough. But we're looking for it in the most fleeting of places, in other people's opinions. It's like trying to build a house on a foundation of shifting sand. A compliment can build it up, a criticism can wash it all away. When you stop seeking that validation, you're not becoming arrogant or aloof. You're simply changing your address. You're moving your sense of self from the shaky ground of public opinion to the solid bedrock of your own inner world. The things Elias made in that studio were objectively terrible. They were ugly. They had no function. But they were also the most important things he had ever created, because they were born not from a need to impress, but from a simple, honest impulse to create, to just be. He didn't suddenly quit his job or abandon his life, but his relationship with it began to change. He started designing with a different question in mind. Not what will they admire, but what feels true. His work became bolder, more human, filled with the kind of beautiful imperfections he'd once feared. Some people loved it even more. Some people didn't. He didn't suddenly quit his job or abandon his life, but his relationship with it began to change. He started designing with a different question in mind. Not what will they admire, but what feels true. His work became bolder, more human, filled with the kind of beautiful imperfections he'd once feared. Some people loved it even more. Some didn't. And for the first time, that was okay. Letting go of the need for validation isn't a single grand decision. It's a quiet, daily practice. It's the moment you choose not to check for likes. It's speaking your mind gently, even when your voice shakes. It's pursuing a curiosity just because it's yours. It's learning to sit with yourself in the silence and hear a voice that has been drowned out for far too long. A voice that doesn't need applause to know its value. The ultimate freedom isn't being liked by everyone. That's an impossible prison. The ultimate freedom is not needing to be. It's the quiet, unshakable confidence of knowing that your own approval is, and always was, the only one that truly mattered. And in that quiet space, you don't find emptiness. You find everything. You find yourself waiting patiently to be seen.